We're going to talk today again about sashing, and we're going to talk about a simple sashing, and this is probably the one that's used the most, and most people use this one when they make a quilt because it's real easy and it looks cute with your blocks. Okay, what you do is you take your blocks and you put a piece of sashing between each one. Now the sashing shouldn't be bigger probably than a quarter size of your blocks. So these blocks are 6 finished, and so a quarter of that, 1/4 of 6 is 1 1/2. So I cut these 2, and so they're going to be 1 1/2, which is 1/4 the size of the blocks. You can make it smaller, but usually bigger is too big. So I've cut this, and then you saw block and sashing and block and sashing and block. And then I've just done that with all of these. Then I'm going to take and I'm going to figure out how big I need to make these pieces. You can sew them together in rows this way or in columns like this, so that it's, let's say this is the columns. And I see a lot of people do that. I'm going to lay this down. I hope that's okay. And then we're going to do a little math here to figure out how big we need to cut these pieces. If you just take your sashing and you just sew it in, it's not going to work. It's going, your quilt is not going to be the same length on each side because these are going to be different lengths when you just sew it in. It isn't going to be the same. So here you go. We got the number of blocks that you have, and I have 3, times the finished size of your block, which when they're sewn in, they're going to be 6. So 3 times 6 is 18. So I'd write 18 there, and I don't know what I did with my marker. Here it is. Okay. So this is 18 inches for this one. Now, the number of rows of sashing, so I have 1, 2. And 2 times the finished size, which is 1 1/2, is 3. So that would equal 21, but then you have to add a 1/2 inch because you still have your seam allowances here and your seam allowances here that you haven't taken in yet. So our total that we're going to cut these are 21 1/2 inches. It's a pretty simple formula, but do it. Do the math. And then it will work out great and your quilt will be square. Then I'm going to sew this in. Now right now it's not going to fit because I don't have my seams taken, but that will fit perfectly. Now when you sew these in, there is one problem in getting these to line up exactly right. And so you're going to have to do some marking or some folding or pinning or something on your long pieces. So after I've sewn this one on, and I will start in the middle, I'll find the middle of each one and I'll pin it from the middle out and pin from the middle out, and then I'll sew this one on, and then I'm going to have to mark across on the other side of the sashing so that I can get this seam where this seam is, so that your blocks are going to line up exactly. If you don't, then your blocks are going to turn out like this. And that doesn't look very professional, and it doesn't make your quilt look very good. So you're going to have to mark it some way to make sure that it lines up going both directions. This is called a simple sashing. It's a great way to put your blocks together. And next week we're going to talk to you about a simple sashing. We're going to add a little bit to it that makes it a little bit easier.